Good evening, MBU, and welcome to the Election Live broadcast. I'm Jay Cropper, riveting Election Live reporter, and I'm here tonight with Dr. Everett Butler, an expert on campaigns and elections, to tell us a little bit more about the 2020 presidential election. Welcome, Dr. Butler.
Thank you for having me.
We're still 2 years away from 2020, and we haven't even closed the polls on midterm elections. Why are we worrying about the presidential election already?
Well, it's not unusual for candidates to be contemplating a run for presidency about 4 years out and then test the waters 2 years out. Then there is an assumption that the incumbent president will run for a second term. But Trump was unusual in announcing in his first year that he would be seeking re-election, so there wasn't much of a break between his campaigns.
I see. Are the 2020 hopefuls having an impact on the midterm elections?
They're certainly trying to. If you help a member of Congress campaign by providing them money or organizing a rally with them, then there's an expectation that they will support you for the presidency. So yes, the candidates are testing their appeal and cultivating loyalty during the midterms.
So, who are the likely candidates of 2020?
On the Republican side, there are a couple of possible challengers to Trump's nomination. Jeff Flake of Arizona and Ted Cruz of Texas. Both have been critics of Trump. Maybe that's why Trump recently held a rally in Texas with Cruz to preempt a run against him.
Have sitting presidents been challenged within their own party before?
Yes, 5 times. Franklin Pierce, John Tyler, Millard Fillmore, Andrew Johnson, and Chester Arthur all failed to win their party's nomination.
Trump did not win the popular vote in 2016 and has had relatively low approval ratings. Do you think he could win re-election?
Well, the polls didn't predict him to win the popular vote in 2016, and he already has a relatively low approval rating, so I'm not about to make any predictions this early in the game.
Understood. How about the Democratic side? Who's on that one?
There are at least 15 names floating around.
Wow.
But at the top of the list are Senators Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Cory Booker of New Jersey, and Bernie Sanders of Vermont. They all might run in 2020. Also, Joe Biden's name is out there.
With all the controversy surrounding Elizabeth Warren after the notorious DNA test, does she really still have a chance at the presidency?
She needed the DNA question to go away, and it may backfire, but right now she is getting a lot of coverage. She is carefully crafting a liberal capitalist platform to appeal to swing voters.
What about Sanders? Don't we all feel the burn?
Sanders will be a good contrast to Warren. He's appealing more to highly progressive activists. He would probably have a lot of youth support like he did in 2016. But then, Warren is also a popular choice for his economic policies.
What about Cory Booker?
Cory Booker is similar to Sanders on a lot of social issues, including Medicare for All. He got a lot of national attention recently during the Kavanaugh hearings. He's been a very vocal critic of Trump.
So I've heard. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Butler, and sharing your thoughts on the 2020 candidates.
It was my pleasure. And to the students and faculty at Mary Baldwin, keep voting.
Today we have Dr. D-Duck here, professor of economics here. Say hi to the crowd.
Hey, glad to be here.
Thanks for allowing us to interview you. And one of the questions is, how is your view on Trump when people say the economy is doing better? What do you have to say about the economy?
What do I have to say about the economy in a political sense? So, I try to tread a little bit lightly in my classes because in many ways economics is really intended to be analyzing, facts and theories and making predictions based on those. But economics is also about making policy judgments, right? So when we're thinking about whether a policy is good or bad for people, economics gives you tools for answering that. And so economists have had some concerns about some of the policy decisions made by the current administration.
Like the steel tariff?
So a great example is the tariffs, right? That for economists, trade is something that makes our economy as a whole wealthier. It makes most people better off. Some people's jobs are harmed by trade, but the majority of people are better off with free trade. And so the tariffs that have been imposed in the last year have seriously increased the cost of doing business for many of the businesses that import products that contain steel or aluminum. And so we've inadvertently increased the cost of U.S. businesses for doing business. And because tariffs have also been imposed in retaliation on U.S. products, it's making it much harder for a lot of U.S. firms to ship their goods abroad. And so economists are expecting to see a decline in our exports to the rest of the world, and the costs of our imports are increasing. So that is going to hurt U.S. businesses in the long term in their profitability. So economists would really like to see these tariffs reversed. So that's one example of concerns we have. Now the other big thing that's going on, of course, is the economy right now is booming, right? I mean, we got unemployment figures today. The unemployment rate is still 3.7%. Lots of new jobs got added last month. We seem to be recovering from the hurricanes pretty well. And one question is this due in part to the tax cuts that were passed last year?
On the 1%?
Well, so the taxes were changed. So we reduced income taxes on people who are better off, right? The higher income people. We also reduced income taxes on corporations.
So do you think trickle-down economy is actually working?
No. So there are no economists who are going to say that the trickle-down effect is working. But tax changes do affect incentives. So one of the things we've seen is that the tax changes on corporations affected a lot of their incentives about investment decisions, about hiring decisions, about what they did about their profits this year. What we don't know, so some of that probably is allowing the economy to grow a little bit faster. But we don't yet know the long-term effects of those tax changes on corporations. Some of them may have positive long-term effects on the corporations, some of them won't. And the tax cuts on individuals really didn't change a lot about the structure of the income tax system in ways that we would find really helpful. And you're right, they did tend to favor wealthier individuals, higher income individuals over middle class or poor. So they probably didn't do what we most would like to see them do, right? I mean, you'd like for a middle income family to get a boost so that they could spend a little bit more, and that might have a little bit more of an impact on the economy long run. But that's not quite what we saw in the tax structure changes.
Do you know if the middle class is growing more still, or is it
so
the same?
There's a little bit of good news that's coming out right now. It actually was just today, and that is wages are growing.
Breaking news.
That is breaking news today, Friday, November 2nd, right? Wages are finally growing a little bit. So good news economically for families, and that does help middle income families. It helps lower income working families. So, if that continues, then that does provide a little bit of help, a little bit of breathing room for families who feel financially strained. How much of that can we attribute to policy changes? That's less clear. A lot of it is just this is the long-term growth trajectory of the economy. This is an expansion that began, about 8 years ago now, and that expansion is continuing. It won't continue forever.
Right.
So the question is, what happens when this expansion ends?
So basically, we just have to wait and see later.
It's always a wait and see.
Is there any similarities to what's happening now, like the steel tariffs, and when Bush was in administration when he started passing steel tariffs first?
I think the challenge with the current tariffs is that they're much more widespread. It's not just steel, it's aluminum. And, we're targeting certain industries in ways that really don't have much to do with economic reality. Right, they're political aims. These aren't economic aims. The economic effects are negative. Are they achieving some political goals? You have to ask the political scientists for that. From an economic standpoint, you pretty much have universal dislike of the tariffs from the economics profession. We would like to see them removed because we think our economy is going to be healthier in the long run if we don't have those tariffs in place.
I'm Sergeant Major Gerald Johnson, the Senior Enlisted Advisor for the VIVO program.
Thank you so much for doing this interview. So first of all, do you know anything about the candidates?
I know a little bit about all the candidates. Haven't decided quite who may vote for that day, but just looking at some of the details, both of them are talking about. So,
What changes would you like to see in our district?
so I would like to see a change in taxes for our district as well as education. Definitely like to see an increase in, so a decrease in taxes and an increase in salaries for teachers.
Do you feel that U.S. territories should be allowed to have voting members in Congress?
Yes, I do. For example, the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, as far as the storms that have recently happened to them, they need a voice and make sure that their concerns are heard in Congress.
How would you improve diversity in Congress?
I would make sure that the public knows that anyone could run for office. Just as well as you're informed on the issues, you could make a difference. And I think you need to see representation of what's in your community within Congress.
Okay. Is it your belief that felons who have served their sentences should be able to vote?
It just depends on the felony offense. Not all felons should be able to vote. I think the lesser offenses on the felonies spectrum should be allowed to vote, yes.
Do you know anything about gerrymandering?
I can't say that I do. I don't have any detail on him at this time, so no, I don't.
How about the pipeline plans to go through Stan? Do you know anything about that?
I do. I know there's a big debate about it. I can't say that I do agree with it. As you know, the pipeline will cause, of course, additional issues, especially within the community and within the environment. So, I can't say that I truly agree with it.
Okay, so for a final question, do you have any other comments about
Okay, so you just had to focus, just restate your question.
for the final question, do you have any other statements or any opinions about the election coming up?
I'd just like to say that I hope that everyone does get out to vote, because you don't have a voice if you don't vote. So we can all complain that our issues are not being heard, but if you don't vote, then you don't have a voice. So, yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.